Thank you. Please be seated. All right, so we're back on the record. You remain under oath, and thank you, Ms. Royster.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Mr. Binya, I believe when we left off, I just asked you the question as to whether or not you were asked to take photographs in different positions around the vehicle, the Malibu. And your answer was?
My answer was yes.
Okay, and you provided those photographs to me as well, correct?
Yes, I did.
I want to turn your attention to what we have labeled as 1594, what we would be calling State's Exhibit 1103. Can you recognize that?
I recognize that photograph.
And what are we seeing here?
This photograph was taken from, it's very similar to a photograph we just looked at a minute or two ago. It is down immediately adjacent to the light pole nearest me in the model. So the suspect's car is at the center of the photograph, and you're adjacent to the rearmost police car in this model closest to me.
And that would be the gray one, correct?
That would be the gray one in the model, and you're pretty much in line with the rear bumper in this photograph.
I'm going to also show you what is marked, has been previously marked as State's Exhibit 1044A. You did not create this, did you?
I did not create this.
Does the positioning of those cars somewhat resemble what you recall that night with regards to the Malibu and the two cars on the side of it?
The position of the cars resembles what I saw that night very closely, and it resembles the model that's been reconstructed here as well.
Okay, and in State's Exhibit 1044A, does it also show that there are police cars behind the Malibu?
It does show police cars behind the Malibu in the same positions as illustrated in the model.
Okay, so when we're looking at the photograph, State's Exhibit 1103, that vehicle is not depicted on this.
The vehicle to the left, you just seen the front tire there, and the left of the photograph is not in this diagram.
And the diagram we're talking about 1044.
1044A, correct.
Showing you what we have as 1595, or we're going to call it State's Exhibit 1104. What are we seeing here?
That is a photograph taken from essentially the same place, and I think I need to explain that these were not necessarily organized or contained in my report. Some of them are, some of them are not. But I provided you with all of the photographs I took and the metadata that goes with it. The photograph we just looked at was a photograph taken with flash.
Okay.
That was one I would not have used to present the condition, but it happened to be in the group. I turned the flash off and set these exposures so they better represented the actual conditions at the time of the event.
So in State's Exhibit 1103, is there a flash used?
There is a flash used in that one.
Okay, and there are no overhead lights on at this time in this photograph?
There are no overhead lights on the vehicles.
I see, Ms. Royster, many photos in that folder. Is there a less tedious way to do this?
I can pull out specific photographs if you'd like.
Well, are you hoping to get them all into evidence?
I am.
Have you seen them, Mr. Shaughnessy?
Yes, I have, Your Honor.
You're well aware that he's going to testify that these are his pictures that he took that night. You may have some other objection, but do we have to go through all of this?
Your Honor, my purpose for going through the photographs in here is to show the different angles around the vehicle. We're going to get through them fairly quick, but I did want to set up the basis of no flash being used, in which photos no flash was used, And just so you can see the different positioning.
Well, how about this? That we can at least, can we not stipulate that he took these that night, Mr. Shaughnessy?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that they more or less accurately represent what you saw that night?
What he saw that night, and I don't think that he needs to describe the angle of each one or what he's observing, because I think the court's well equipped to do that on its own.
Okay. So I'll go through them quickly without having him go into.
And you just call him by your number. You don't have to call him by the file number.
Okay.
By the way, it's my intention to break for lunch at 11:45, just FYI.
Thank you. So we've done State's Exhibit 1103. We've done State's Exhibit 1104. Looked at State's Exhibit 1105. Was there flash used in this?
No.
Looking at State's Exhibit 1106. Was there flash used here?
No.
1107. Was there flash used here?
Nope.
1108. Did you use a flash here?
No.
1109. Was there flash used here?
No.
1110. Was there flash used here?
No.
1111. Was there flash used here?
No.
And in 1111, it looks like the photo was taken from an elevated position. Can you explain that?
I was asked to stand on the trunk of the police car, which in the model is shown to, from the driver's position to the right of the suspect's car. I was asked to stand on the trunk and take this photograph looking in and at the suspect's car.
1112.
I was asked to stand, there's no flash, and I was asked to stand on the hood of the suspect's car and take a photograph into the front seat.
$1,113.
And the same answer,
No flash.
no flash.
1,114. Any flash.
No flash.
1,115.
No flash.
1,116.
No flash.
1,117.
No flash, and obviously I must have nudged the tripod when I took that because it's a little blurred.
You say that because it's blurred a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I can see why you didn't include that one in your report.
Yeah, I try and put good ones in.
I imagine.
1,118.
1,118, no flash.
1,119.
No flash, and obviously, again, when you're standing on a hillside that's a little slushy, taking a picture, sometimes you nudge the tripod.
1,120.
No flash.
And we see the overhead light in this photo as well.
Yeah, and just as a general rule, if you can see, you look at the orange sky glow up in the upper left-hand corner, that is that light pollution sky glow I was referring to. And when you have a cloudy sky, it captures the light going up from the city. So it takes on a glow like that. And if you can see that in the photograph, there was no flash.
1,121.
No flash.
1,122.
No flash.
1,123.
No flash.
1,124.
No flash.
And just for the record, some of these overhead lights still on that one, correct?
Correct.
And when I say overhead, I'm speaking of police vehicle.
Light bars.
Yes, bars. 1,125.
No flash.
1,126.
No flash.
1,127.
No flash.
1,128.
I believe at this point you asked me to essentially reshoot most of the ones we just saw, but with light bars on.
And that's the light bars of police vehicles, correct?
Yes.
1,129.
That, no flash, and I spoke earlier of the light bar on that particular vehicle that you see in the center of the top portion of the photograph. That particular light is aimed fairly well at the hood and the windshield of the suspect's vehicle.
And that's just the light of that sheriff vehicle?
That is the light on that sheriff's vehicle.
1,130?
This is showing what an individual standing, or at least partially standing in a kneeling position, in a position that was attributed to activities of that evening, on the trunk of the sheriff's car looking at the suspect's car.
Any flash?
No flash.
1,131?
Same, sometimes I did 2 exposures or more because of the flashing lights changed the exposure time and the flash conditions a little bit.
Just for the record, that's not you, is it?
Sorry, didn't mean flash. And the exposure time conditions.
Okay, and that's not you?
That is not me.
Who's your model? Do you even know?
BCI agent.
All right.
1,132?
Essentially the same as before, different flashing light bar conditions.
1,133?
Same.
1,134?
Same model, different position for the camera.
1,135?
Again, different exposure, essentially the same picture we just saw, no flash.
1,136?
Same picture we just saw, same position, different light bar,
No
flashing light condition.
One moment. Here, take me back. Pardon? Take me back one, please. Is this one left on?
No, we looked up there. That's 36.
1,137?
Same position of camera and model. Again, different light bar condition, slightly different exposure.
1,138?
I moved the camera position, same model. This is capturing the view of the situation from the relative to my compass settings from the east side of the suspect's vehicle.
Any flashings in 1,139?
No flash.
1,140, still a little blurry, you move.
Yeah, that's one of the things, just so that those who are curious understand, the camera I'm using here is a Nikon E8400. It's a zoom, mild zoom camera, so I can go either to a mild wide angle or a mild telephoto. So I am changing if you will, the size of the image a little bit to best capture what I understood you wanted me to try to capture under these conditions. What happens when you zoom in a little bit, because many of them are shot very wide, when you zoom in a little bit, any movement becomes exaggerated with timed exposures.
Thank you. 1,141, any flash?
No flash.
1,142, any flash?
No flash.
1,143, any
No
flash?
flash.
1,144, any flash?
No flash.
1,145, any flash?
No flash.
1,146,
No flash.
1,147,
No flash.
1,148,
No flash.
1,149.
No flash.
Again, we're at a different angle now.
You're now, you're now, I think everybody can tell you're now in a position where you're to the north and, let me get this right now. It's supposed to be. Well, we can see this. You can see the suspect's vehicle, and you're off to the passenger side and slowly to the north of it.
1,150, any flash?
No flash.
1,151,
No flash.
1,152,
No flash.
1,153,
No flash.
1,154,
No flash.
1,155,
No flash.
1,156,
No flash.
1,157,
No flash.
1,158,
No flash.
1,159,
No flash.
1,160,
No flash.
1,161,
No flash.
1,162,
No flash.
1,163,
No flash.
1,164,
No flash.
1,165,
No flash.
1,166,
No flash.
1,167,
No flash.
1,168,
No flash.
1,169,
No flash.
1,170,
No flash.
1,171,
No flash.
1,172,
No flash.
1,173,
No flash.
1,174,
No flash.
1,175,
No flash.
1,176,
No flash.
1,177,
No flash.
1,178,
No flash.
so make sure we're not repeating one. One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
No flash.
1,181,
No flash.
1,182,
No flash.
1,183,
No flash. And we're back to the beginning.
Mr. Bigney, I know that you're here testifying today on behalf of the state of Ohio. I just want to ask you, have you ever testified for the defense side before?
I'm in the process of working for the defense on a capital murder case in Arizona as we speak.
Okay. You said it was a capital murder case?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever testified in defense as it relates to any kind of police case?
No.
And have you ever testified for the state as it relates to a police case?
No.
One more question, Mr. Binya. The case that you're working in Arizona, is that an outdoor lighting case?
Yes, it is.
How does the lighting compare in that case to the one you had at Heritage Middle School?
Sustained.
You said it was an outdoor lighting case, though?
Yes.
And I would assume that in that case, as well as what you did at Heritage Middle School, that you would have to evaluate the different types of light and give an opinion on that.
Well, hold on, that question overruled.
I would assume that you would have to, in the case that you're doing for the defense now, have to evaluate the lighting outside and give an opinion in that case as well.
Using exactly the same principles, procedures, and everything else.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Royster. Do you have any cross-exam, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, how are you?
Not bad. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Just to be clear, you were hired to go out to the Heritage Middle School and measure the amount of light in as similar circumstances as you could to November 29, 2012.
Yes, sir.
And when we say measure the amount of light, we're saying quantify the amount of light there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Whether it be in foot candles or some other form, correct?
Yes, sir.
So your job wasn't to interpret what somebody could see, but rather to see how much light there was.
Correct.
And I think that you told us that at the conclusion of your job, you could quantify how much light was there, and then somebody else could conclude whether or not somebody had an ability to see that night.
Correct.
That would be for another person.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're an electrical engineer, correct?
Yes, sir.
Computer science, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're obviously, and not to beg the question, you don't have any training in how the eye works, do you? You're not an eye doctor?
As I said earlier, there is a requirement to be proficient in our business that you have some understanding of physiology, the process of sight, the process of being able to see. But I can't go beyond just saying, yes, I'm aware of it.
Okay. You're not an optometrist, you're not an ophthalmologist, correct?
Correct.
You're not a medical doctor?
Correct.
Okay. What your findings show then is that you went out to the Heritage Middle School, they gave you 2 sheriff's cars, correct?
They had the...
They set up 2 sheriff's cars and a white car, and what they said was similar to what's on that model,
Well,
correct?
they had more than 2 sheriff's cars here.
Well, let's start there. We started with 2 sheriff's cars and what, a white car that they stuck in the middle, correct?
Correct.
All right. How many other sheriff's cars were there?
Well, if you go south, so that's towards me is south from the suspect's car, that gray car that is the closest one to me was there, and it was both in a position closer to the vehicle in front of it, and then we moved it, I should say they moved it to the position it's now in, correct?
Okay.
The vehicles to the north of the suspect's car, as shown, include all the way up, to the best of my knowledge, to at least as far as you're standing, were all present as well.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
So another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
At least.
Okay. And were there any cars up on this area?
There were some cars up there, too.
How many were up there? If you
I
recall?
don't know. I don't recall. I'd have to refer to my photographs.
Well, we just went through all of your photographs, and it's pretty evident that you took a lot of them, right?
Yes, sir.
And in trying to capture or quantify the amount of light there, you did that in various forms, correct?
I did it primarily using illuminance or foot candle measurements.
I guess what I'm saying is, you started with the sheriff's cars, correct? They had sheriff's cars there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you know if the light bars on the sheriff cars are the same as the light bars on the Cleveland Police Department cars?
I was told they're different.
Okay.
And I was told that the sheriff's cars may have more features or more capabilities than the Cleveland police cars that were there that night. So I was told there was an effort made to turn on only the light features in the sheriff's cars that were present on the Cleveland police cars.
Okay. So you were told that the light bars were different, but they would attempt to replicate them as clearly as possible?
Yes, sir.
So when you start out and you want to get the circumstances as close as you can, we know that the light bars were different, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we know that you used a white car instead of a blue car, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you ever shown any pictures of the damage to the windshields of the police car that was located here and the Malibu that was located there?
I was not shown any damage to the windshield of the police car, and I was aware of damage to the suspect's car, but I don't recall seeing a good photograph of it.
Okay. Nobody ever gave you a good photograph of the suspect car and approximately 58 bullet holes in the front windshield, did they?
I believe I remember seeing a photograph. It may have been in the police report, but I did not study it very carefully.
At no point was there an effort to replicate the bullet holes in the windshield of that car for your study, was there?
I don't think the person on the car would have liked that very much. No, sir.
I'm just saying, they didn't take a car and put it in a similar circumstance with 58 bullet holes in it for purposes of your study, correct?
No, sir, they did not.
Okay. They gave you a car that was undamaged, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they gave you a car that was a different color, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When we saw your photograph, sir, what I'm getting at is you took a lot of pictures without any flashing lights on, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you took a lot of pictures with perhaps one car having flashing lights, correct?
Oh, at the point we went from no flashing to flashing, they turned on all the cars.
Okay, well, we can go back through them all, but just maybe in summary, we can say this, because the judge will get them, is you took various lighting samples, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're not there again to recreate what a human being could see. You're there to quantify the amount of light, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think it's the IES, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And ultimately, you determine whether or not the lighting on this scene exceeded the IES levels, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first thing you want to do is say, without any cars there, does the Heritage Middle School meet the IES standards, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it does, right?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. It's a relatively new school, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we could say that the East Cleveland Board of Education at Heritage Middle School followed the IES standards, correct?
Yes, sir.
And their parking lot is illuminated according to their standards.
Yes, sir.
And those standards are things such that you can park and feel safe in a parking lot, correct?
Could I retract that for just a second? I did not take measurements of the parking lot per se.
Okay, so you didn't take any, you didn't go in first and just say, let's see how this is lit before we put any additional lighting into the situation.
I was only concerned with the area immediately surrounding the suspect's vehicle. I did not go down into the parking lot and verify the light levels.
Okay, so just to be clear, you didn't take light levels without cars in there with lights on?
Correct.
Okay. So when you take your light level, you're quantifying the amount of light that's there regardless of the source, correct?
Not correct. When I take light measurements, and we would call this in situ, okay?
I'm sorry?
We would call this in situ, INSITU. It means in the situation, in so many words, in the condition. An in situ measurement is the measurements as, to the best of our ability, recreate exactly what was there at the time of the event.
I must not have said it right because that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I didn't go in situ, but what I meant is you're taking light levels that include the light from the pole lights and any illumination that's coming from the vehicles.
Correct.
And you're combining that together and coming up with your reading.
Correct.
And that could be from light bars.
We did it without light bars and with light
I
bars.
understand.
Yes, sir.
It could be with light bars, without light bars, with headlights, without headlights, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you came up with the various readings that you went through with Ms. Royster, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you told us that they exceeded the minimum levels by the IES, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Now, in doing that, we saw a number of the photographs that you had, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in some of those photographs, obviously, there are no flashing lights or light bars, correct?
In some of them, yes.
Okay. And in some of them, the other extreme is that there's many flashing lights or light bars going, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in some of those where the flashing light bar is going, we see red and blue almost clouds. Would you agree with that?
That is correct.
Okay. And they almost encompass your model. Isn't that correct in some of those?
In some of them, yes.
Okay. And those would show varying circumstances that you photographed, correct?
Correct.
So in some of those, when the flashing red and blue light bars are going, we see, they almost take up the picture. If I hold my hands out like this, it almost puts a veil over me or the person in the photo, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Your purpose, however, wasn't to determine what effect those flashing red and blue light bars would have on somebody on the scene. Your purpose was to quantify the amount of light that they provided.
Correct.
And as you indicated, the effect that the lighting, whether it be overhead lighting, whether it be the side white or alley lights that you had on, or the overhead red and blue lighting, the effect that that had on anybody at the scene would be left to a different expert, correct?
Correct.
And obviously, sir, when you're quantifying the amount of light on the scene, you don't take into account things, physiological changes to the body, correct?
Correct.
You're a scientist measuring only the amount of light at the different points that you set up your meter.
Correct.
Okay. So, prolonged chase or being shot at, looking at red and blue lights for 22 minutes, things like that don't factor into anything that you've done.
No, sir, they do not.
You wouldn't be qualified then to testify about what the purpose of the light bar on a police car is, would you?
No, sir, I'm not.
I mean, I know you're a lighting architect, correct?
In so many words, yeah. It's more of an engineer, but
Okay, lighting engineer. So if there were, say, a project and I wanted to illuminate a large area, I might call your firm to come out and design how that lighting would work, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So even if I wanted to light the Heritage Middle School, you might be a company that I would call up and say, we'd like to meet the IES. Could you come out and tell us where to put the lights?
I've designed many schools, yes, sir.
Okay. But it wouldn't be your expertise to say that, for example, a police light bar isn't generally a good source of illumination when you want to see things, is it?
Generally not, yes. I would
Generally
agree.
not.
I
It's a
would agree.
strobe, right?
It's a strobe.
Okay. And it's flashing, right?
It's designed to gain attention. That
Right.
much we do know from the physics side of the world that if we flash lights, they will gather your attention.
Right. And along that line, the red and blue flashing lights on a police cruiser are designed so that if you're driving up ahead or the police car is behind you, that it grabs your attention
Correct.
so that you stay out of danger or you pull over so that that car can get to its destination.
Correct.
Okay, so it's designed if you're driving along in your car, you might be talking to a friend, you could have the radio on, and you're supposed to see that light out of the sides of your eye, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's supposed to grab you and draw attention to you.
Yes, sir.
If I wanted to go out in the backyard and take my dog for a walk in the night, I wouldn't take a strobe light that's red and blue to walk through the dark backyard, right?
No, sir, I would not recommend that.
Right, you take a flashlight, right?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you're published, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you do a lot of writing for architectural lighting.
That's one of my publishers, yes.
And while you're not an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, and you can't say, based on the pictures that we saw earlier, what effect those red and blue lights going on various cars for a duration of time had on the viewer, you have written about glare, correct? And you've indicated that sometimes we want glare in a situation, correct?
That's correct.
And I think you've opined things such as at a rock concert, correct?
It's been known to be used for exactly that purpose, yes, sir.
That the glare and the strobe goes through the crowd, correct? And that then that has a physiological response in people, right?
Glare, what we do know, and this is, I think I need to explain this just a little bit so that everybody understands where illuminating engineering stops and the physiological sciences start. We need to be aware of the sensations we cause when we design certain types of lighting. And we need to know whether those sensations are physiological or psychological or in some way affect people and how they do. We're pretty much required to know that. And so I would confirm, yes, glare is a physiological response that is actually a form of pain. You can have enough light that it's painful.
Right.
But it's a form of pain. If you feel the sensation of glare, there's actually a physiological reason in your eye why that occurs.
Okay. That'll be for the next expert.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you certainly have written and been published that glare is physiological and can cause intense physical response.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as an architectural lighting engineer, sometimes you want to get that physiological response, correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, I think you've opined or written about the effect that that can have at a rock concert, for example,
Yes.
on the crowd.
Exactly. The scanning of an audience with a glare light source
Right.
excites the crowd.
Excites the crowd.
People do that, yeah.
As a physical and a physiological reaction.
Yes, sir.
In a human being. Right. And when you talk about pain from light, I think you've opined or written before that looking directly at the sun on a bright day can cause you pain.
Oh, yes. Significant pain.
Okay. So again, for another expert, but the blinding light in your eye can cause physical pain.
That is part of the literature of illuminating engineering, and so therefore we're expected to know it and practice it as necessary.
Okay. So sometimes in your profession, you want to create a glare atmosphere, correct?
Sometimes, rarely, but yes, sometimes.
And it's rarely because it really doesn't provide for optimal viewing, right?
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct.
Okay. It's not a good viewing situation
Yes.
to have glare.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you ever heard the term veiling glare?
Yes, sir.
And what does veiling glare mean to you?
What happens in the sensation of glare, and when you have a light source that's extremely bright, let's say I have a powerful flashlight and I'm shining it right in your eye, there will be an area not only where the light hits your retina, but also an area around it that's affected. And your ability to see through that, it's as if a veil were pulled in front of your eye. You can't see definition near the source of the light.
Okay. So the brighter the light that is placed into your eye, the more you have the veiling glare effect.
Yes, sir. With the critical understanding that that light has got to be aimed at your eye.
Okay. You've also talked about the phenomena when you're discussing glare, and you've written about it, of going into a movie theater on a sunny day.
Yes, sir.
And when you go into the movie theater from the sunny day and into the dark, your eyes have to react and adapt.
That is a phenomenon called transient adaptation.
Okay. And I think without being experts, we can all say that we've experienced that, correct?
That's exactly correct.
As long as we've gone to a movie on a sunny day.
Well, we can go through many experiences that do similar things.
All right. And then when you come back out of the movie theater to the sunny day, there's another area where your eye has to react and adapt again to the light.
That's true.
And it'd be fair to say that strobe lights, whether they be black and white or red and blue, can have some of that same effect on our eyes.
They can.
They can. I think it was back in the 70s, it was popular to dance to strobe lights, right?
I seem to recall that,
Seem
yes.
to recall that. And that go to discos and places, and they would flash the lights at everybody, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that phenomena, maybe it made some of us look better because they could only see us half the time, but the real phenomena was kind of disjointed, almost like a robot, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Stroboscopy.
it's a better word for it. So, being in the presence of those lights, red, dark, blue, dark, red, coming around, would have a stroboscopic
Stroboscopic, yes, sir.
effect on somebody who was internalizing it.
Yes, sir.
And I suppose I could just ask this one. If a windshield has 58 bullet holes in it and it's spider web, that's harder to look through than a clear windshield, correct?
Yes, sir.
The risk of, it's the commercial Captain Obvious, right?
Yes,
The
sir.
risk of being Captain Obvious, that's true, correct?
Yes, sir.
And looking through a damaged windshield is more difficult than looking through a clear windshield, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you'd agree that the strobe effect on a damaged windshield would have a different effect than it would on a clear windshield.
Yes, sir.
And going back to the disco and the moving and the stroboscopic or the robot type thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And be fair to say that strobe lights on a damaged or spider webbed piece of glass are going to have different reflections than they would on a clear piece of glass.
Yes, sir.
Have a minute, Judge?
Sure.
Sir, when you take your photographs, not great on photography, but there's a shutter speed,
Yes.
and the longer the shutter is open, it's my understanding, the more light that comes into the camera.
Correct.
Okay. Did you use the same shutter speed when you took all of the pictures in this case, or did you vary that?
I set the camera in a what's called an aperture priority automatic mode. Aperture, A-P-E-R-T-U-R-E, priority manual mode. Okay. What happens with automatic cameras today is the selection of the film speed or equivalent film speed, ISO or ASA rating, which determines, first of all, how fast the exposure fundamentally is. Then there's the aperture, which is the opening of the lens, how there's an iris within the lens, and it can be either more open or more closed, much the way the human eye works. And then finally, there's the period during which the aperture or the shutter is opened. So in an aperture priority situation, you're telling the camera, I want you to shoot this at a particular f-stop. You pick the right exposure based on my criteria. The challenge of taking photographs under these conditions, let's talk about static lighting for a second, because as I think I illustrated earlier, the photographs that Ms. Royster went through, I shot a series of them with no light bars on, and then I shot roughly the same series again with light bars on, or finally turned on. The process of taking those photographs is one of setting the camera in the right spot, choosing the aperture I wanted to shoot at, which was, generally speaking, it'd be in the metadata on the pictures of exactly what aperture, and letting the camera pick the exposure that I want based on plus and minus adjustments I make, with the objective being to take a photograph that most closely represented what I saw. Okay? Because if I underexposed it or overexposed it, we all know what under and overexposure is.
Correct.
the whole purpose of this was to get exposure that most closely matched what I saw through my eyes. So it's a little bit of a trial and error, but fortunately digital cameras, you go through that, setting up the camera, and then you know you've got the right settings and you can proceed to take a series of photographs without having to continually readjust. The camera then makes the readjustments as you move on. So it's a complex process of taking the pictures so that they, to the best of my ability, represent what I saw. And I've gotten to be fairly good at this because it's turned out to be a very handy part of trying to have explanations like we're having today.
Okay, and I say that because it appears from some of the photos that you took in almost the same spot that we see varying degrees of brightness.
And that was as a result of you can't exactly time when you hit the shutter, take the picture, and the flashing lights will be either not on, or this one will be on, that one won't be on, or one will be on and off. Funny things will happen, you can't coordinate that. So the purpose of taking several photographs in a row was to illustrate those dynamics that I think you were describing earlier.
Right, the strobe coming around.
Yeah.
So sometimes your shutter catches it when it's very bright, sometimes it catches it when it's not bright at all.
Correct.
And around and around and around it goes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Excuse me. Mr. Benya, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Are foot candle measurements arithmetic in the sense that if you have 2 foot candles, it's 2 times as much light as 1 foot candle and so on?
Yes, sir.
Right. How many foot candles are in this room right now? About.
Well, it varies from point to point. So what's here
Well, how
and
about
what's
in the
here?
best lit point?
I'd say, again, you know, that's why we have meters, but my eyeballs tell me that the average light level on the horizontal surfaces, you know, where your papers are and everything, is in the vicinity of 30 to 40 foot candles.
And then when I go into the bathroom at night and I just have a tiny little plug-in night light, how many foot candles do I have?
Well, again, that will vary whether we're talking about your face or on the counter or whatever.
Right. I mean, I certainly understand that you're only giving me an estimate, but I just want to get a sense of it.
That's going to be in the neighborhood of probably a half to 2 foot candles, not unlike the typical readings I've measured on the site.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask Ms. Royster, do you have any redirect based upon what has been asked in the court?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bigman, you were asked about your photos and capturing different things at different times.
Yes.
And I believe you stated that that's why you took different photos, so you can try to capture the varying lights from switching, correct?
Yes.
But you also took videos, correct?
Yes.
And those videos shows the lights happening simultaneously, is that correct?
That's correct.
You were also asked about movie theaters. If you're in a movie theater and you come out of a dark movie theater to the bright outside light, and how it affects your eyes.
Yes.
And you stated that it would have an effect.
Yes.
And how did you describe that?
Well, transient adaptation occurs when you go from a light levels, let's say in a movie theater, not including the screen. So, you know, the movie's basically in a very dark phase or something like that. The light levels in a movie theater are 0.001 foot candles, very, very low. And then you step outside, then even if they turn the lights on in the theater, the light level still is probably at 3 to 5 foot candles at the most. And you step outside, and on a sunny day, it's 10,000 foot candles. So that going from 5 to 10,000 is what causes a sensation.
And it's kind of a shock.
It's a shock.
And it's sudden. As soon as you step out, it's the shock, correct?
Correct.
But if you're in that movie theater for 22 minutes watching that movie, within that movie theater, you're not going to have that shock, are you?
You become adapted to the darkness or the lightness.
And you were asked questions about the lights and whether the lights they can excite a crowd. I think you were talking about rock concerts, right?
Yes.
And you stated something about light can be painful. You recall saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in rock concerts, they have these flashing lights. Is that fair to say?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and they have them during the entire rock concert sometimes.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
I might add, though, that the lights in the rock concert can be significantly brighter than the flashing lights on police cars. I think that's a point that should not go unrealized. The flashing lights on police cars are bright, but when we do things at rock concerts, we're working with things that are on the order of 10 to 1,000 times brighter.
So brighter.
Much brighter.
You ever been, you said when you're working with things in a rock concert, so you've been in that environment, right?
Yes, a little bit.
And when you were in that rock concert environment, were you hurt by those lights?
I turned my eyes away from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you turned your eyes away from them, that's looking directly in the light.
If you look directly at them, and that's another important point. For you to experience the pain, you have to look right at the light source. If it's in your peripheral vision or behind you, it doesn't cause the pain.
Okay. So I think that goes with your example when you said if you try to stare at the sun, everybody knows that you hit,
Your body will force you away, yes.
And that's what you mean by staring directly at the light for some length of time.
Right.
You were also asked a question when we were talking about the different police vehicles. And you were asked a question about whether or not the Malibu that was there that night had 52 bullet holes in the windshield. Do you recall that?
Yes.
The 52 bullet holes in the windshield, will that affect the people in the Malibu's ability to see or the people outside of the Malibu's ability?
Both.
Okay. The people outside, would that affect their ability to see inside of the Malibu?
It would affect the ability for people outside to see inside the Malibu, and it would affect people from inside the Malibu to see out.
So, if you're outside of a zone car and all these bullet holes aren't in the windshield of the Malibu, we're not talking about the same thing. Light measurements are fine, right?
Yes.
If you're outside of the vehicle and you may be in a different position, still not all bullet holes in the Malibu, we're still talking about the same thing.
I think we've demonstrated photographically and measurably that if there's no bullet holes, or perhaps one bullet hole in a corner or something like that, the question is if the windshield has been shot full of holes, there's going to be all kinds of breaking up in the windshield itself, which is going to cause diffusion, diffraction, and other things that will make transparency impossible.
So if you don't have 52 bullet holes while you're changing the different positions, as we've shown in the photos, the visibility is not going to be affected by that.
The visibility is not affected if there's no holes.
Okay.
What I illustrated would be what occurred then.
So it's only until those holes are put into that windshield. Mr. Shaughnessy spoke to you about 50-something holes in the windshield. It's at that time, and I don't think there were 50-something, by the way, but it's at that time the holes are in the windshield that the visibility becomes a problem.
That's correct.
Nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Royster. Do you have any recross, Mr. Shaughnessy, based on what's been asked since you last took place?
Just real quick, talking about looking, let's say all the light bars are on all of the cars, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we're trying to look into the suspect vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said obviously, again, I think this is being overly obvious, if there's a small hole in a corner, that's probably not going to have an effect on your ability to see it.
Depends upon the pattern it creates as it penetrates the windshield and as the windshield structure begins to deteriorate.
Obviously, as we had 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, on and on and on, and the integrity or the glass begins to have more cracks and breaks and holes, it's going to further affect the ability to look in.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Benya, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome to depart. Do you have your recorder there? Let's give it to Ms. Royster.
Thank you.
I would like to use these 20 minutes or so productively. Do you have another witness, Mr. Bell?
Yes, we can start with one, Your Honor.
Okay. Is he or she going to last only 20 minutes?
No, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
I wondered.
So you've called Dr. Robert Martin to the stand.
All right. M-A-H-E-R?
Yes, sir.
Kindly raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear you testify to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Watch those machines and this step here. Please have a seat there. Please speak in the microphone.
Thank you.
You're going to be part of Mr. Bell or somebody else?
I will, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Judge.
Well, I think you're just in the courtroom, but we're going to break in about 20 minutes. But we'll get into your testimony.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bell.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Robert C. Maher. Maher is spelled Mike, Alpha, Hotel, Echo, Romeo.
Okay. You are a doctor, is that correct?
A PhD, yes, sir.
Okay. And where do you work, sir?
I'm employed by Montana State University, Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering.
In what capacity?
I'm the department head and a full professor in that department.
How long so?
I joined Montana State in 2002, so approximately 13 years.
Okay. And
Yeah,
how
may I
long?
I apologize, but may I make an objection for the record? I don't
To
know
what,
if
the testimony and on the whole?
there's- No, Your Honor. We're asking that there be a separation of witnesses. I'm not quite sure who's in the courtroom. I'm not quite
Well-
sure.
Pursuant to your order.
For the experts, it has been, they've been exempted from it. But if there's anybody in this courtroom who is going to be a witness not in an expert capacity, you should depart.
That's the nature of my objection.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Your Honor.
But as always, I have to rely on the parties because I don't necessarily know who the witnesses are.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Maher, you were saying that you're a division head, is it? At
The
Montana
title is
State?
department head.
Department head, okay. And how long have you been a department head at Montana State University?
I joined the university in 2002 as a regular professor, and then I became department head in 2007.
Okay. And what are your duties as a department head?
I'm in charge of the administrative aspects of the department, so I ensure that the faculty in the department are teaching the required courses in our electrical engineering curriculum. I handle the budget matters, and then I also serve as a professor, so I'm doing teaching, research, and service in the land grant mission of the university.
And do you set, as part of your duties, do you set the curriculum or part of the curriculum there?
I'm involved with the faculty in determining the curriculum and the accreditation that goes with that.
Okay. And what are some of the courses that are taught there at the university as it relates to the interest that we have here today?
The electrical engineering department offers degrees in electrical engineering and computer engineering at the undergraduate level, and then also master's degrees and PhDs in electrical engineering. The field of electrical engineering covers a wide range of topics, everything from electrical power systems to communication systems to computers to microfabrication to illumination to audio signal processing, which is my particular area of expertise, and so we offer courses in a wide range of those subjects.
Okay. And you've taught them as well, is that correct?
Yes, I'm currently this semester teaching Electrical Engineering 217, which is called The Science of Sound, which deals with acoustics and audio signal processing. I'm teaching Electrical Engineering 477, which is a senior level digital signal processing course with a laboratory that goes with it. And I'm teaching Electrical Engineering 487, which is professionalism and ethics, which covers ethical principles for engineers.
Okay, so you're an electrical engineer, a professor, and a department head at that university. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And your educational background, please?
I did my undergraduate work in electrical engineering at Washington University in St. Louis. I received my degree in 1984. I then received the National Science Foundation Graduate Fellowship and pursued graduate studies first at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and received my master's degree in electrical engineering in 1985. Then I enrolled at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign to work on a doctorate and received my PhD there in electrical engineering in 1989.
Are you published in the area that you're going to be speaking about today, sir?
During my career, as part of my work as an academic researcher, I do publish routinely in journals associated with the area of my expertise.
What is that, sir?
Primarily in digital signal processing, audio engineering, and acoustics.
Did you prepare a report for today?
Yes, I did.
Have you reviewed that report?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Are you familiar with the exhibits that we will be speaking to you about today, sir?
Yes, I believe that I am.
I'd like to show you a packet of those exhibits in one moment. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Marr, please look at the packet that I have for you with State's Exhibit stickers on it. Do you see those?
Yes, I do.
Would you please review them for the court?
I see a copy of my forensic audio analysis report dated May 28, 2014. It's labeled State's Exhibit 1059. I see an image from that report labeled 1059B, which in my report would be labeled Figure 2.
Stopping there, I'd like to show you another exhibit. Include this with the packet. What is that?
You've handed me a CD, or read-write CD labeled State Exhibit 1059A, and I see on the CD my initials and the date 2014-05-08, indicating May 8th, 2014.
Okay, and what is that exhibit, sir?
This is a CD that contained a audio-video file of information related to this case.
Information that you reviewed, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, go on, sir.
I see a copy of a paper that I have written called Directional Aspects of Forensic Gunshot Recordings. This is labeled State's Exhibit 1059C. I see a copy of a paper entitled Gunshot Recordings from Digital Voice Recorders. This is labeled State's Exhibit 1059D. I see a report entitled Forensic Audio Analysis Report Addendum. This was prepared by me and has the date March 14th, 2015, and is labeled State's Exhibit 1060. And I see a photograph that appears to be of the an aerial photograph of the middle school and the area of the incident, and it is labeled State's Exhibit 1060A.
Okay, you're familiar with all of those?
Yes, sir.
And you reviewed those in making the report and the letter that is contained in this packet?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, these are the exhibits which we'll have and we'll be going through. For brevity's sake, we'd like to have it for you so you can review it if you wish to.
Well, I'm the finder of fact. Is there, and it's sort of a strange circumstance here. I have looked at his reports, Mr. Shaughnessy, Mr. Mack, and Mr. D'Angelo, to consider the objection. And so I've seen it. At the same time, I'm the finder of fact, and they're not yet in evidence. Do you have any objection, Mr. Mack, to me looking at these during the testimony?
I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Doctor, can you tell us about the field, your expertise in forensic audio analysis?
The field of forensic audio analysis covers three general principal areas. One is considerations of authenticity of audio evidence that is likely to be used in a court or in an investigation. The second aspect of audio forensic analysis field is enhancement. So that is working with recordings to try to make the utterances more intelligible or to remove noise or other interfering signals. And the third aspect of audio forensic analysis is interpretation, and that is taking a signal that has been recorded and interpreting the contents of that recording to find forensically relevant information. So that would include things such as timing analysis, it would include spectrographic analysis, and it would include critical listening of that material.
Okay. Have you also heard of cross-correlational analysis, sir?
Cross-correlation is a mathematical technique that is done on the time signal or the waveform signal to understand more about its progression in time and its characteristics. And in particular, it's used to judge similarity of different time domain signals.
Okay. And peak form analysis. You're familiar with peak analysis?
Peak analysis, I believe the term that you're referring to would be looking at the recording to determine the maximum sound level or the characteristics of the waveform associated with that recording.
Okay. And we asked you to take a look and listen to, using your techniques, the exhibit that you've already mentioned, 1059A. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
And did you make an opinion and findings as to what you were listening to, sir?
I was asked to review the audio-video recording, and I was told that it had been obtained from a dashboard-mounted camera and microphone system in a police vehicle that was near the scene of an incident. And so I did receive and then reviewed both the video and the audio of that recording.
Yes. And did you make opinions based upon what it was that you were listening to and performing your methodologies here, sir?
The request that was made to me was to interpret the gunshots that were audible in that recording. And in the course of doing that, I was also checking to see whether there had been any obvious changes or alterations or disruption to that recording that was provided to me. And it was my opinion that it was had good integrity.
Okay. You used several techniques in order to review the material that was provided. Did you use critical listening, sir?
Yes.
And spectrographic analysis, sir?
Yes.
And waveform analysis, is that
Yes.
correct? Are those the three techniques that you used?
Yes, those were the three techniques used in this case and are a standard part of this type of analysis of any forensic audio material.
Okay. Please explain them one by one, the critical listening.
Critical listening refers to playing the recording in a quiet room and listening to it with my ears through speakers or headphones. And the critical aspect refers to being able to start and stop the playback, review the material, adjust the levels, and listen for not only what you might refer to as the foreground sounds or the obvious material in the recording, but also the background sounds or any incidental sounds that might be a little less noticeable. So critical listening requires some concentration and over a period of time listening repeatedly to the material of interest.
All right. So it's listening to the material, also listening to certain portions of the material, is that correct?
Yes, depending on the type of investigation, there may be portions of the material that have greater interest to the investigation.
Okay. And when you say repeatedly, how often or how long would you be listening to an audio such as the one that you were listening to here?
Depending on the length of the material, it would be something that would be focused on for perhaps an hour of listening repeatedly, long enough to address the questions, but not so long that it becomes fatiguing or difficult to maintain concentration.
And as part of that critical listening technique, would you go back to something like that and listen further at another time?
Yes, generally it's not done on one occasion, but the fact that the recording is available and can be listened to several different times under different circumstances is very routine.
in switching to 1059A, the material that you did review, did you do that in this case? Listen to it repeatedly over the course of an hour, and as well as listening to it on other occasions repeatedly?
Yes, I performed a preliminary listening of the material when I received it in May of 2014, and then contacted your office to give my initial impression of the recording and the ability to determine various timing information and other factors, and then did subsequent listening in a critical fashion in the process of preparing the report that you had requested.
Sure. And what was your preliminary analysis before you placed the phone call, sir?
The preliminary analysis consisted of receiving the compact disc, which arrived via FedEx. I believe I received it May 8th, 2014. So I arranged to play the video and audio of that recording to make sure that I was able to recover it off the CD correctly. Following that, I used the software on the computer to be able to separate the audio portion from the video portion, because for this analysis the video portion was not providing any information that was relevant to the audio that was picked up by the microphone in the recording.
Okay, and your opinion at that time, preliminarily?
My preliminary opinion of that was that the signal on the recording was of sufficient quality and integrity that questions regarding the contents of the recording were going to be possible to address.
Okay, and have you had situations where that is not the case, and you've had to say that there's nothing there that you can listen to or could be measured?
Yes, it's quite frequent in the work that I have done that a defense attorney or a prosecuting attorney will provide evidence and ask for an opinion about it, and in many cases I've had to say that the recording is of poor quality and not sufficient to be able to use standard audio forensic analysis principles.
So this is something that you've done before?
Yes, sir.
For defense attorneys?
Yeah, yes, for defense attorneys and for prosecuting attorneys and others.
Okay. And you have testified before regarding your techniques?
I've testified in court in the form of a deposition, and then in court on 2 different occasions.
Okay. And you've taught in this area before as well, is that correct?
Yes, I've been a professional educator for about 25 years and have taught in this field for that time.
Okay. You also have another methodology that we spoke about, the spectrographic analysis. Can you explain what that is?
Actually, if I might interrupt, although I hate to break with a question hanging out there, but it can be re-asked.
It's a good play.
We've talked about 3 methods you've done: critical listening, spectrographic, and waveform analysis. You've now described one of those. At this point, we're going to take a break, and then we'll resume after lunch with talking about spectrographic analysis. But you remain under oath, and I'll get to return to the stand. My goal is to go on the record at 1:20.
120.
But you're welcome to step down now.
The time you're on? I'm sorry.
Let's plan on going on the record at 1:20.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're off the record. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our study. Both trials are very Another day?
Actually, I had a quick question for you.
On this case?
Not about the case, no. It's about a technical thing that came up for me yesterday.